What's the fastest way to sell 3 million records with no radio play? Get the government to call you the most dangerous group in America. The FBI's attempt to kill N.W.A.'s album didn't just fail. It taught hip-hop that controversy is the single greatest sales multiplier. This is the definitive record of the day the federal government tried to censor hip-hop and accidentally gave it its first $3 million marketing campaign. To understand the commercial paradox, you must understand the war. This 40-year fight to silence hip-hop did not begin on wax. It began in the streets. Born from the profound deprivation of the urban ghetto, hip-hop emerged as a poetic voice against Reaganomics and deindustrialization, continuing the protest tradition of the Black Panther Party and Gil Scott-Heron. By the mid-1980s, the establishment had built its infrastructure of control. The PMRC successfully pressured the RIAA to establish the Parental Advisory Label, PAL. The tools were now in place to target and classify music as dangerous. But the biggest threat wasn't heavy metal. It was the unflinching social commentary of gangsta rap.
Beginning in July, this label, which you're about to see, Parental Advisory, explicit lyrics, will appear on albums whose songs explicitly deal with sex, violence, suicide, and substance abuse. The label will appear on the lower right-hand corner at the discretion of record companies and individual artists.
The opening salvo was fired in 1988 with N.W.A.'s debut, Straight Outta Compton. This album was a raw social document detailing life under the constant pressure of the LAPD, a volatility fostered by operations like Chief Daryl Gates's infamous Operation Hammer. N.W.A. successfully resisted the pressure to become commercially sanitized. The album immediately became a flashpoint, described by one publication as the West Coast firing on New York's Fort Sumter. The lightning rod was the track, F*** the Police. Structured as a mocked court proceeding, the lyrics were uncompromising. The authorities chose to abandon the high legal path of incitement and instead opted for preemptive censorship through intimidation. Before we delve deeper into the terrifying sequence of events, remember to hit that subscribe button and join us on the Real Hip Hop Fiend YouTube channel for more definitive inquests into the culture's greatest mysteries. On August 1st, 1989, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, intervened directly. Assistant Director Milt Ulrich sent an official warning letter to Priority Records, the first time a federal agency had officially opposed a sound recording.
The day we got the FBI letter.
What was the FBI letter?
We got an FBI letter. They sent the letter to Priority Records saying one guy was like, I'm, part of this department of the FBI, and we're very concerned with this record called Straight Outta Compton.
Ulrich claimed the song encourages violence and represented the opinion of the entire law enforcement community. This federal letter was the tip of the spear in a coordinated attack. Police departments used informal fax networks nationwide, urging the cancellation of N.W.A. concerts, leading to shows being forcibly shut down in Detroit and jeopardized in Milwaukee. The ACLU's Danny Goldberg condemned this, stressing that the official letter carried an implied threat. The government's attempt to silence N.W.A. triggered the ultimate commercial paradox, formerly known as the Streisand effect. The official condemnation was the most potent, free marketing they could have received. Ice Cube later reflected, "It didn't crack us, break us, it just made us stand up even more." Despite zero mainstream support, Straight Outta Compton sold a massive 3 million copies quickly following the federal intervention. The political firestorm had guaranteed cross-cultural appeal. A remarkable 80% of these sales occurred in predominantly white suburban areas. Yet, this success was steeped in compromise and internal contradiction. The debate often privileged the external political critique against the police, while downplaying the internal social critique of the misogyny found in tracks like "A Bitch is a Bitch."
The view of N.W.A.
Furthermore, the pressure for the quick commercial hit was immense. Dr. Dre later remarked, "I can't stand that album. I threw that thing together in 6 weeks." The FBI's letter established the commercial blueprint for gangsta rap. It failed to enforce silence and instead taught hip-hop the first, most powerful lesson of the 40-year fight. Controversy doesn't kill the culture, it pays for it. But the fight for free expression was far from won. The next battle moved from political intimidation to the courtroom, forcing the legal system to define whether explicit lyrics were constitutionally protected art. We turn now to 2 Live Crew. The conservatives' weapon was the Miller Standard. In 1990, a federal judge in Fort Lauderdale made history, declaring 2 Live Crews as nasty as they wanna be, the first sound recording in U.S. history to be judicially deemed obscene.
But Luther Campbell, lead singer of the rap group 2 Live Crew, is the producer of the first record ever to be found legally obscene by a federal judge.
This wasn't a political warning. It was a legal precedent that, if upheld, would have shredded the First Amendment. Where N.W.A. faced a federal political threat, 2 Live Crew faced a local moral crusade. The album, characterized as dirty rap, was the ideal target for the ongoing culture war led by the PMRC. Their single, Me So was already a national hit, rocketing to number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100. This national visibility made them an irresistible target. Broward County Sheriff Nick Navarro secured a court order and explicitly warned retailers they would face arrest for selling the material. The crusade succeeded. Federal Judge Jose Gonzalez applied the 3-pronged Miller test for obscenity and ruled the album obscene, declaring it an appeal to dirty thoughts, not to the intellect and the mind. This chilling ruling led directly to the seizure of copies from retailers and the subsequent arrest of group leader Luther Campbell and store owner Charles Freeman. The constitutional firewall had been breached.
This is a multi-millionaire and he's going to jail. You know why? He's Luther Campbell and he heads 2 Live Crew and they're upset in Florida. The cops not only busted the rock group, they busted a record seller for selling their albums.
The crackdown wasn't limited to sales. In a bold act of defiance against the ban, members of 2 Live Crew were subsequently arrested simply for performing their songs at a club in Florida, demonstrating the state's aggressive reach to silence the music in every possible venue. The genre's constitutional survival hinged on countering the claim that the music lacked serious artistic value. The defense called upon Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates, Jr. to prove that the filthiest lyrics were, in fact, art. Gates successfully testified that the explicit lyrics were rooted in the African-American vernacular traditions of doing the dozens and boasting. By connecting the music to a genuine cultural lineage, the defense established its artistic merit and shielded it from censorship. In May 1992, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals delivered a monumental victory in Luke Records versus Navarro. They affirmed that artistic tradition secured the album's First Amendment protection. The Supreme Court denied certiorari, officially cementing the ruling. Hip-hop lyrics were now virtually immune from successful obscenity prosecution. The legal victory was an unbreakable constitutional firewall, but the political failure had an unintended economic consequence. The moral panic generated by the case was the direct trigger for the RIAA to standardize the Parental Advisory Label, PAL, in 1990. It was intended as a form of retailer restriction and consumer warning. In a staggering act of commercial defiance, 2 Live Crew's subsequent album, Banned in the USA, became the very first album to officially carry the PAL sticker. They successfully inverted the warning label, transforming it into a powerful symbol of authenticity and rebellion, which guaranteed sales by indicating the album contained the uncompromising content that drove youth interest. The 2 Live Crew case won the judicial battle for artistic freedom, but it lost the institutional war, demonstrating that economic coercion was the final tool of censorship. This shift set the stage for the apex of censorship, where corporate fiduciary duty would triumph over legal precedent, the total recall of a record. We turn now to Biz Marquis and the economic precedent. The constitutional war was won. The First Amendment protected the content of hip-hop, but the genre had secured its freedom of speech, only to find that its freedom to create was now under attack. The next battle was not for cultural rights, but for economic survival. For its first 2 decades, hip-hop's distinctive sound was built on the foundation of sampling, the ingenious, uncompensated reuse of copyrighted music, layering classic soul and funk records to create entirely new tracks. This practice was the engine of the genre. But legally, it was an unregulated intellectual property gold rush. This entire system was about to collapse with one courtroom battle. The defendant was Biz Markie, the clown prince of hip-hop, known for his playful, lighthearted style. His 1991 album, I Need a Haircut, contained the song Alone Again. The track was an innocent 12-second loop of the 1972 soft rock ballad Alone Again, Naturally, by Gilbert O'Sullivan. Biz Markie had, characteristically, simply forgotten to clear the sample. This small, seemingly trivial omission triggered a monumental legal ruling. Grand Upright Music, Limited, v. Warner Brothers Records, Incorporated. O'Sullivan's publisher sued. In December 1991, Judge Kevin Thomas Duffy ruled decisively against Biz Markie, delivering one of the most famous, succinct, and destructive statements in music law. Thou shalt not steal. The judge did not issue a fine. He issued an injunction. He ordered the immediate seizure and destruction of all copies of I Need a Haircut. Furthermore, he went beyond the civil court, referring the case to the U.S. Attorney for criminal prosecution, effectively branding Biz Markie a thief. This was the new face of censorship. The impact was immediate and total. Prior to this ruling, artists rarely cleared samples. Post-Biz Markie, every single sample had to be cleared, or the artist risked financial ruin and criminal referral. This lawsuit officially ended the Wild West era of hip-hop sampling and set the legal precedent that defines copyright law in music today. Biz Markie later poked fun at the situation by naming his 1993 album All Samples Cleared. This single precedent legally redefined the cost and legality of production, turning hip-hop's sonic foundation from a free creative resource into a corporate liability. This process introduced a mechanism for political dilution, solved not with law, but with cost. The result? The cost of making an album skyrocketed. This forced the genre to fundamentally recalculate its sound. It hastened the shift away from complex, multi-layered sampling towards the use of original, synthesized beats, favoring producers who could create soundscapes from scratch, rather than those who meticulously borrowed from the past. The industry had survived the FBI, the PMRC, and the Supreme Court, but it was permanently changed by the economic precedent that legally established that you cannot make music for free. The courts protected the lyrics of hip-hop, but corporate America quickly learned the new winning tactic: ban the image. The powerful, organized protests that led to the recall of Ice-T's music taught record executives a valuable lesson. When in doubt about racial controversy, silence the artist. In 1994, this lesson was applied to KMD, featuring the future MF Doom. The victim was the underground duo KMD, featuring Zev Love X, the artist who would later achieve immortality as MF Doom. Their sophomore album, Black Bastards, was scheduled for a 1994 release. The controversy centered entirely on the cover art, which was designed by Zev Love X himself. The group believed a black bastard identity symbolized the illegitimate black child of white America. The cover was an intentional, visual provocation, a critique of racial trauma that depicted a racist caricature, the Sambo figure, being lynched. The image was meant to comment on enduring racial stereotypes. But for their label, Elektra Records, this was deemed an unmanageable public relations risk. Crucially, Elektra had just been burned by the Ice-T cop killer furor 2 years earlier, a case that proved political opposition could severely cripple a label financially. This resulted in the first successful instance of corporate preemptive self-censorship against hip-hop imagery. Instead of risking a political disaster, Elektra canceled the album, dropped the group in 1994, and paid Zev Love X a confirmed $20,000 to take the master tapes and leave the label, effectively paying him to disappear. KMD's managers called the decision totally ridiculous, accusing the corporate parent, Time Warner, of censorship. The album was shelved and circulated only as a mythical bootleg for 6 years. The cancellation and subsequent underground mythology became the crucible for artistic reinvention. The Black Bastards cancellations cemented the rule. Major labels would tolerate controversial lyrics, but they would immediately suppress imagery involving charged racial history to avoid an unmanageable PR disaster. The corporate apparatus learned to control the culture by preemptively killing the product. KMD was defeated by a single image. But the biggest political voices in the genre, artists like Public Enemy, faced a far more insidious form of control: the accountability paradox. This precedent showed that the political price for mainstream success was the sacrifice of ideological purity. By 1990, Public Enemy was the undisputed leading voice of racial resistance and rage. Their album, Fear of a Black Planet, was released amidst a cauldron of racial conflict in America, following incidents like the mob murder of Michael Griffith and the killing of Yusuf Hawkins. The album was a philosophical declaration, challenging listeners to confront the fear that divides us through anthems like Fight the Power. Burn Hollywood Burn called out racism in the film industry, and 911 is a joke criticized poor emergency response in black neighborhoods. But their mass visibility exposed an Achilles heel. The group's success meant that their internal fault lines were now under immense scrutiny. The crisis centered on Professor Griff, Richard Griffin, a key member of their S1W security and propaganda team, whose anti-Semitic public comments were immediately seized upon by external pressure groups. This was a case study in organized political action. Public Enemy faced persistent and organized opposition, including persistent calls for a boycott, orchestrated by prominent external activist groups. The pressure was explicitly cited as a main factor forcing the band to act. This demonstrated that external forces, referred to as a propaganda machine, could capitalize on internal issues to force compromise. The collective was forced to apologize, restructure, and ultimately dismiss Professor Griff. This incident established the severe accountability paradox that would define subsequent controversies. While Chuck D could demand freedom of speech or death against systemic racism, the inflammatory targeting of specific ethnic or religious groups resulted in immediate, successful political action against the collective. This highlighted a clear double standard in how the media and industry assigned accountability. To retain their massive platform and commercial viability, Public Enemy had to compromise ideological extremes. Their high visibility turned into a vulnerability, confirming that political action could not stop the music, but it could successfully force the artist to self-police their message. This struggle to control the artist's identity would escalate in the following years. The state had lost the legal battle, but opponents swiftly adopted a strategic new weapon: corporate financial pressure. They learned to attack the artist's revenue stream to achieve censorship where the courts failed. This precedent was solidified by Ice Cube's sophomore album, Death Certificate. Released in 1991, the album faced a ferocious, two-pronged ideological attack. It was immediately accused of hate-mongering by Billboard and dismissed by some critics for its content, which addressed both racial confrontation and internal community feuds. The album, which featured Cube standing over the corpse of Uncle Sam, was commercially successful, debuting at number 2 and selling 105,000 copies in its first week. The track, Black Korea, commented on the volatile conflict between black residents and Korean immigrant shop owners in South Central. It contained the explicit incitement to retaliate against stores, warning them, "So pay respect, or we'll burn your store right down." The fallout was strictly financial. The Korean American Grocers Association, KAGRO, launched a highly effective targeted retail boycott, successfully pressuring the parent company of St. Ides Malt Liquor to remove Cube from their lucrative advertising deal. The album also reignited the N.W.A. feud with the track No Vaseline, aimed at former manager Jerry Heller. Activist groups like the Simon Wiesenthal Center denounced the album, citing its racist lyrics. Cube attempted to deflect, framing the criticism as a distraction from the larger need for Black unity. Ice Cube eventually apologized to Kegro leaders, demonstrating the power of organized pressure. This episode established the financial targeting precedent. Corporate entities proved willing to absorb general political protest, but rapidly severed ties when the content triggered organized boycotts deemed too risky to their stability. The ultimate lesson was that financial leverage was now the preferred tool of censorship, bypassing the First Amendment's protections. The Ice Cube incident was the blueprint for corporate evasion. But the greatest crisis in hip-hop history, the cop killer scandal, was the moment all three weapons, political, financial, and corporate, were mobilized to achieve a single goal: national censorship. The song, released on the debut album by Ice-T's heavy metal band, Body Count, was recorded in 1991. The song, written from the perspective of an angry character, became a national lightning rod in May 1992, immediately following the acquittal of the officers who beat Rodney King. The song's provocative title and lyrics, which contained specific threats against police, became the immediate soundtrack for the LA riots and the widespread rage over police brutality.
The controversy behind rapper Ice-T's controversial Cop Killer song is reaching new levels. A local city councilwoman is making her point to ban the song. She's having the widows of slain police officers speak up.
The outcry was instantaneous and massive.
I think it's just going to incite more violence. Once you say, cop killer, cop brutality, these people are going to turn around and start doing something.
I think it's just going to cause more riots and hatred against police officers. I think it's a silly verse. I really think they should do something more educational instead of about killing, because we have enough of that out here as it is already.
Law enforcement agencies, led by the Combined Law Enforcement Associations of Texas, CLEAT, threatened a national boycott of all Time Warner products, the parent company of Ice-T's label, Warner Brothers Records.
He called Cop Killer, a first-person depiction of black urban rage over such things as the beating by Los Angeles police last year of black motorist Rodney King. Last week, police groups in Texas called for a boycott of all products made by Time Warner, the conglomerate that owns, among other things, Warner Brothers Records, the label that distributes the new Ice-T album Body Count, on which Cop Killer appears.
The protest escalated to the highest levels. President George H.W. Bush publicly denounced the song, calling it sick. This level of political and financial pressure was unprecedented. While Warner Brothers CEO Gerald Levin initially stood by Ice-T, citing First Amendment rights, the organized boycott threatened the conglomerate's stock, board of directors, and shareholders. Facing bomb threats against executives and millions of dollars in potential losses, Time Warner forced the decision. Although Ice-T formally announced that he was removing the song voluntarily, it was a forced act of corporate self-preservation. The remaining copies of the album were recalled and destroyed. The fallout was decisive. Ice-T left Warner Brothers Records in 1993 after further disputes over his next solo album, Home Invasion, effectively ending his relationship with the major label system. The Cop Killer saga established the ultimate limit. No matter the artistic defense, direct, explicit incitement of violence against a protected class, combined with massive corporate financial pressure, guarantees censorship and artist exile. This became the final, governing rule of the culture wars against hip-hop. With legal and economic censorship now understood, the political establishment moved to its final, insidious tactic: blaming art for the breakdown of American society itself. They positioned the artist as a social contagion, a scapegoat for systemic failure, and they found their target in the militant reporter, Tupac Shakur. Tupac's 1991 debut, Tupacalypse Now, was explicitly conceived as a protest album, documenting poverty and police brutality. In 1992, the album was tragically linked to the murder of a Texas Highway Patrol trooper by Ronald Ray Howard, who claimed he was influenced by the music. Vice President Dan Quayle immediately seized the political opportunity, launching a cabinet-level attack and asserting a direct causal link between the art and the crime. Quayle declared, "There is absolutely no reason for a record like this to be published. It has no place in our society." Activist groups went further, pushing for the prosecution of Time Warner executives under charges of sedition and anarchy. This established the causal violence scapegoat precedent, politicians criminalizing the messenger to avoid accountability for the volatile social conditions that bred the music. Tupac's response was a defiant philosophical counter-critique. If this is violence, then violence what I gotta be. Look through our history, America's the violent one. Tupac cemented this revolutionary stance by sampling Quayle's condemnation on his next album, turning the vice president's voice into a symbol of his persecution. The final lesson of the era was clear. The state failed to ban the music, but it had succeeded in using the music to brand black artists as social threats, a prejudice that would define the culture wars for the next 3 decades. The government had leveraged its power, but the American legal system delivered a fatal blow to the censors. The 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals had ruled that 2 Live Crew's music had artistic value, establishing a constitutional firewall for the entire genre. The political battle was lost, but the commercial war was about to begin. The FBI letter to N.W.A., the arrest of Luther Campbell, and Vice President Dan Quayle's direct demand that 2 Pacalypse Now be withdrawn. All of this official opposition failed to silence the artists. Instead, it served as a highly effective, government-sponsored marketing campaign, transforming the parental advisory sticker from a warning into a symbol of authenticity and rebellion. This commercial paradox fueled a new empire built entirely on the very outrage the establishment sought to suppress. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg immediately capitalized on this notoriety. The success was instantaneous. Doggy Style became a cultural landmark, selling an immense 806,000 copies in its first week alone, demonstrating that the appetite for uncompromised political rap was enormous. By the year 2000, the controversial blueprint was fully realized. The final barrier, that of race in a predominantly black genre, was broken by Eminem, whom critics called what Elvis was to his generation. Eminem became the cultural lightning rod for the new millennium, armed with the legal protection won by his predecessors. Where Snoop Dogg's massive debut set the bar, Eminem's aggressively transgressive Marshall Mathers LP, packed with the misogyny and homophobia that fueled moral outrage, vaulted over it. It sold an astonishing 1.76 million copies in a single week. This figure not only broke the record as the fastest-selling studio album by any solo artist in American music history for 15 years, it provided the final, undeniable proof. Outrage was the new market logic. The battle for free expression was not won with a plea. It was won with a purchase. The political establishment failed to silence the protest. Instead, their very attempts to censor only provided the controversial backstory necessary to turn a cultural movement into a billion-dollar industry, paving the way for the total global dominance we see today. The courts protected hip-hop, but the industry learned the final, profitable lesson. Outrage wasn't a risk, it was a quantifiable asset. The period between 1996 and 2000 was the ultimate commercial collision, where organized resistance directly fueled billion-dollar sales, transforming the parental advisory sticker into the most valuable marketing logo in music history. This era birthed 3 distinct archetypes of commercial collision. The first was gender shock, the strategic use of explicit sexuality to shatter male-dominated norms. The second, corporate shock, the catastrophic failure of Disney to censor the insane clown posse. And the third, political/moral shock, the unprecedented Senate-level attack that drove Eminem to record-shattering debuts. The opening salvo in this new identity war was fired by Lil' Kim. Her 1996 debut, Hardcore, established the female sexual autonomy precedent, pioneering a radical mode of womanhood in the mainstream. The identity was defined by the queen persona, overt, raunchy sexuality, coupled with a lyrical delivery asserting absolute financial and sexual control. The visual presentation was equally confrontational. The promotional poster, featuring Kim squatting, legs spread in lingerie, was a deliberate move toward unapologetic female agency that shifted the industry dynamic from hypersexualization imposed upon women to hypersexualization chosen by the artist. This instantly fostered a dialogue in the culture. This radical stance was not without internal cultural pushback. The challenge to male-dominated norms contrasted sharply with the external critique that condemned the music for promoting objectification. This criticism found a potent voice in other artists, such as the underground black female artist Sarah Jones. Her song, Your Revolution, served as a powerful lyrical counter-critique against the prevailing sex genre. She directly challenged the idea of a revolution that objectified women, asserting, "Your revolution will not happen between these thighs." The commercial trajectory validated the blueprint. While the album debuted strongly at number 11 on the Billboard 200, the true victory was its durability. It spent an astonishing 47 weeks on the charts, reflecting deep catalog penetration. Hardcore achieved double platinum status in the US and is consistently cited as exceeding 5 million units sold worldwide. This sustained long-term consumer interest confirmed that the collision surrounding Kim's explicit content was a highly desirable cultural product. It proved the commercial viability of gender-based shock when framed as empowerment, leading to Lil' Kim becoming the first female rapper to have 3 consecutive platinum LPs. Even 22 years post-release, in 2018, the album hit number 1 on the iTunes hip-hop/rap chart, cementing the commercial permanence of the female autonomy precedent. The gender war was a profitable foundation. But the next battle was one of pure commerce, where a $2 million deal with Disney would collapse into a highly public recall, handing Insane Clown Posse the ultimate anti-establishment victory. The commercial war shifted from gender politics to pure corporate panic. The challenge for the establishment was no longer stopping the music, but preventing a public relations disaster. And in 1997, the biggest name in American family entertainment, the Walt Disney Company, delivered the ultimate multi-million-dollar gift to the ultimate outsiders: Insane Clown Posse. Insane Clown Posse, ICP, consisting of Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, had carved out a fiercely loyal niche. Their identity was built on lyrics trafficking in themes of graphic violence, dark magic, and blasphemy. They cultivated the Juggalos, a devoted fan base utilizing creepy clown makeup and material specifically designed to be unpleasant enough to satisfy rebellion-hungry teens. Their 1997 album, The Great Milenko, was intended to transition the duo to the major leagues. Hollywood Records, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, paid a reported $1 million to acquire ICP's contract. Despite knowing ICP's reputation as 2 unhinged, profane rappers, Disney, desperate for big names, anticipated continued sales success.
Disney is pulling the plug on a rock band from Detroit called Insane Clown Posse. No joke, the group's new album is loaded with obscenities, and Disney appears to want no part of the band. As Channel 7's Kurt Rivera reports, the recall comes on the heels of a boycott vote from the Southern Baptist Convention.
Disney immediately attempted to enforce its corporate image standards. During recording, the label demanded lyrical changes and the removal of 3 tracks, including one referencing rape and murder, and another depicting the murder of children, due to their graphic nature. The group complied, but the internal fear remained intense. The collision reached its crisis point hours after The Great Milenko was shipped to retailers. Hollywood Records distributed 100,000 copies, but then took the extraordinary, very costly venture of recalling every single shipment. The album was deleted from its roster. Despite selling 18,000 copies and charting on the Billboard 200 in those few hours, the label ordered the immediate return of the units. Disney publicly claimed the release was an oversight. Crucially, this panic was spurred by external pressure. The Southern Baptist Church was actively boycotting Disney due to perceived anti-family products. The corporation stopped production to avoid further controversy, demonstrating that censorship was arbitrary, driven not by morality, but by corporate branding fear. This panic created a massive wave of free publicity for ICP. The commercial collision proved highly beneficial to ICP, granting them the ultimate unlikely victim narrative. News of the recall made the duo more popular than ever. Island Records swooped in to acquire distribution rights and released The Great Milenko uncensored. This corporate drama energized the fan base, providing an immediate sales validation. The album quickly sold over 1 million copies and was eventually certified platinum by the RIAA, surpassing 1.7 million copies sold in the United States. The victory was secured not by the music, but by the public demonstration that the man was afraid of it. The persecution narrative surrounding the recall solidified the identity of the Juggalos as dedicated outsiders, an identity war that persists today. In 2011, the FBI classified the entire fan base as a hybrid criminal gang, leading the ACLU to file a federal lawsuit arguing that their constitutional rights to expression were violated by the government's arbitrary categorization. The corporate coup proved that failure to censor was the best sales strategy. But no controversy, corporate or cultural, could prepare the establishment for the scale of the next collision, where a white rapper from Detroit would turn political outrage into record-shattering global velocity. We have seen cultural shock and corporate shock, but in the year 2000, the moral anxiety gripping the nation, especially following the Columbine High School massacre, created the perfect storm. The collision would escalate to the highest level of government, and in doing so, launch a white artist into the global apex of commercial outrage. The groundwork was laid by Eminem's 1999 debut, the Slim Shady LP. Serving as the pilot episode for his provocateur persona, the album was defined by dark satire, cartoonish violence, and antisocial content. The first wave moral collision was already evident. Early tracks had to be censored, driven by intellectual property owners who refused to clear samples unless highly offensive lyrics, including graphic violence, were removed. But the 1999 sales figure of 283,000 was dwarfed by its successor. In 2000, the Marshall Mathers LP intensified the themes, shifting toward explicit discussions of drug use, targeting celebrities, and autobiographical violence. Recognizing the severe post-Columbine atmosphere, even the uncensored version of the album included self-censorship, bleeping out the words "kids" and Columbine. The controversy surrounding MMLP rapidly escalated far beyond industry norms. The album's lyrics became the central subject of a U.S. Senate Commerce Committee hearing on entertainment marketing practices. The political firestorm was led by Lynn Cheney, then chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Cheney cited the album's lyrics as indescribably violent and hateful, specifically referencing the content dealing with violence against women and attacks on homosexuals. She advocated not for direct legislative censorship, but for a retail boycott, shaming corporations into dropping distribution. This high-profile, cabinet-level condemnation ensured continuous, top-tier media coverage. Simultaneously, advocacy groups mounted organized resistance. GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, condemned the album for promoting hatred and organized demonstrations outside both the MTV Video Music Awards and the Grammy Awards. This collective institutional hostility effectively reframed the act of purchasing the album as an essential rite of passage for the key consumer base, the rebellious teenager. The results were undeniable. The jump in first-week sales from 283,000 for the first album to 1.76 million for MMLP is mathematically correlated with the intensity of the political firestorm. This hyper-accelerated sales velocity, 1.76 million copies in a single week, set an all-time record for a solo artist debut. The massive volume of political condemnation had directly converted outrage into currency. The album went on to become Diamond certified, reflecting over 11 million certified units in the US and an estimated 25 to 35 million copies sold worldwide. The controversial Slim Shady persona created a brand identity so culturally powerful and financially valuable that its commercial protection continues decades later. The initial identity wars created a permanent, highly defended intellectual property asset. The legacy of the commercial collision was clear. The failure of institutional opposition was the greatest accelerator of sales. Whether it was Lil' Kim defining female autonomy, Insane Clown Posse achieving corporate martyrdom, or Eminem weaponizing the US Senate, the protest became the crucial backstory necessary to turn a cultural movement into a billion-dollar industry. We have seen shock translate to sales. But what happens when the outrage is so universal, so volatile, that corporations preemptively censor the artist? In 2008, Nas sought to reclaim one of the most inflammatory words in American history, sparking a war over language that exposed a profound truth. In the commercial collision, major retailers hold the ultimate veto power. Nas's 9th studio album, though eventually released as Untitled, was originally intended to carry the most provocative title possible, Nigger. Nas framed this choice as a powerful, necessary act of title warfare, an attempt to confront the historical and contemporary power of the racial epithet, strip it of its derogatory sting, and force a national reckoning on race in America. The announcement drew immediate and sharp condemnation, notably from civil rights organizations and black community leaders like Reverend Al Sharpton and the N.W.A. They publicly argued the use of the slur was morally offensive, transcending context, and reinforced self-degradation. Yet, Nas found support from peers like Jay-Z, Common, and Ice Cube, who defended his artistic freedom to recontextualize the language. This war over words instantly turned into a commercial collision. The original title posed a fundamental threat to the album's distribution and sales potential. Major retailers, most notably Walmart, indicated they would refuse to stock the album under the title Nigger, due to anticipated public backlash and internal policy. This created a distribution bottleneck that no major label could ignore. The pressure from retailers and political figures, including New York Assemblyman Hakeem Jeffries, who threatened to withdraw state pension investments from Universal Music, forced a compromise. Nas relented, changing the title to Untitled, a pragmatic necessity to ensure the music reached his fans and secured retail shelf space. He publicly maintained, however, that the audience would always know the album's real title. The battle over the title was lost, but the message was preserved through visual warfare. The final cover was a powerful statement that silently communicated the album's theme. It depicted the back of a shirtless Nas with scars forming the shape of the letter N, directly referencing the brutal history of flagellation during slavery. This visual artifact connected the banned word to its raw, historical origins. Despite the turmoil, the album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling about 187,000 copies in its first week, and eventually achieving gold certification. Nas's decision cemented his image as a socially conscious icon, demonstrating that the title controversy, though leading to a change, successfully amplified the album's core themes of race, struggle, and black identity. The war over racial language was narrowly won by corporate fear. But in 2010, the most audacious figure in hip-hop history would take the commercial collision to an entirely new aesthetic level, turning a career crisis into a triple platinum masterpiece. Nas fought a real battle over a dangerous word. Kanye West saw that struggle not as a warning, but as a blueprint for calculated controversy. Following a career-threatening public incident in 2009, West used his 2010 comeback album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, to redefine the limits of visual warfare, turning a potential retail ban into a triple platinum victory. By 2010, Kanye West's public persona was already a flashpoint. MBDTF was his artistic statement emerging from self-imposed exile, a maximalist vision confronting his own ego, fame, and personal demons. Unlike previous shock artists, Kanye's controversy was premeditated and designed to affirm his identity as an unbridled, monstrous genius. The central controversy revolved around the album's intended main cover, a painting by artist George Condo. It depicted a highly explicit scene, an abstract, winged female creature, the Phoenix, straddling a nude, abstract caricature of West, the Griffin. Artist George Kondo later confirmed that West explicitly asked for artwork that will be banned, confirming the strategy of intentional provocation. West then spun the publicity machine, leaking the provocative image on Twitter and dramatically declaring it banned in the USA. He leveraged the incident to claim retailer hypocrisy, cheekily comparing his painting to the nude baby on Nirvana's Nevermind cover. This stunt was a deliberate marketing strategy to challenge commercial gatekeepers and generate pre-release momentum. While major retailers like Walmart denied outright banning the artwork, they confirmed their standard practice was to only carry the edited, heavily pixelated version. To secure mass distribution and wide retail shelf space, a lesson learned from the N.W.A conflict, the explicit image was relegated to limited deluxe editions. The mass-market CD ultimately featured a less controversial alternate painting. Despite, or precisely because of, the commercial collision over the cover, the album was a critical and commercial success. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling a staggering 496,000 copies in its opening week. The album was later certified triple platinum, 3 million units, by the RIAA, proving the calculated shock marketing highly effective and solidifying the visual/retailer autonomy precedent. The battle over quality and art was a major commercial win. But the final archetype of the title and visual war would emerge 2 years later, when a West Coast rapper dared to fuse gang culture with the most sacred of all subjects: religious iconography. We have traced the commercial collision from moral panic to calculated visual stunts. But the final boundary of the era, the line considered most sacred and therefore most profitable to cross, was religion. In 2012, the game launched Jesus Piece, a concept album designed to force an iconography challenge, a direct confrontation between gang life, Christian faith, and the commercial gatekeepers of culture. The album's central theme was the awkward balance, the coexistence of faith and the thuggin' lifestyle. The game described his identity as a modern, post-baptism Christian who still frequented the strip club, drank, and smoked. This inherent duality was the identity war at the heart of the album, forcing a conversation about hypocrisy, redemption, and the spiritual life of a rapper. The visual warfare was immediate and extreme. The controversial deluxe artwork, created by Mike Saputo, depicted a stained glass window portrait of a dark-skinned Jesus Christ, but adorned with gang signifiers. Christ was shown wearing a red bandana, associated with the Bloods gang, over his mouth, with a teardrop tattoo beneath his eye. This fusion of religious piety and gangster identity drew accusations of blasphemy from conservative commentators and devout Christians. Representatives of the Catholic Church reportedly contacted his label, Interscope, in an attempt to get the artwork changed. The provocative visual was deemed to trivialize or appropriate Christ's message for street credibility. Like Nas before him, the game confirmed that the aggressive visual imagery caused distribution problems. He stated that major retailers like Walmart and Target initially refused to carry the album with the explicit cover. The game admitted the shock was part of the plan. "It did what I wanted it to do," he stated, acknowledging the strategy of generating controversy to amplify his message. Ultimately, to secure mass sales, the explicit stained glass cover was relegated to the deluxe edition and limited vinyl. The standard version featured a non-controversial photo of the game paying homage to his deceased brother. While the album debuted at #6 on the Billboard 200, its lasting impact was to force the conversation. The Jesus Piece cover remains a definitive case study of how religious imagery versus retailer block became the final, high-stakes evolution of the commercial shock strategy in hip-hop. The commercial collision, 1996 to 2012, established a clear calculus. Outrage is the most powerful sales multiplier. Whether through gender, political, or religious warfare, the ultimate failure of censorship, or the deliberate pretense of it, guaranteed one thing: exponential commercial success. But as digital platforms replaced physical stores, the next phase of this collision would move inward, triggering a period of profound cultural self-critique. The commercial collision has reached its final, most dangerous form. The fight has moved from physical store shelves to the digital servers of Silicon Valley. Crucially, the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment guarantees apply only to state action, not to private entities. The digital dilemma replaces governmental censorship with instantaneous, global, corporate disassociation. The conflict is now governed by contract law and the self-interest of the new gatekeepers, the digital service providers. The digital battlefield grants prosecutors a permanent, indexed weapon. Mac's album, Shell Shocked, established the devastating precedent of lyrics as evidence in a homicide trial. In 2001, prosecutors used his verse, "Murder, murder, kill, kill. If you fuck with me, I'll put a bullet to your brain," as evidence of his criminal mindset. Despite arguments that the line was spliced and hyperbolic, Mac was sentenced to 30 years, ultimately serving 21. His case proves the ultimate consequence of weaponized artistic expression. The digital archive eliminates the distance between a recorded performance and its real-world criminal consequence. The judicial weapon, however, faced a formidable counterattack. 2 decades after Mac's tragic sentencing, artists and activists, led by figures like Jay-Z, successfully pushed back. They submitted petitions to state governments, arguing that using rap verses as criminal evidence was unconstitutional and racially discriminatory.
Jay-Z, along with other performers, are making their voices heard in an effort to change a New York state law that allows rap lyrics to be used as evidence in criminal trials. Now, according to the New York Post, prosecutors can use rap lyrics as evidence against a defendant in court.
This advocacy led to the legal counterpunch precedent, forcing state legislatures, such as New York, to enact laws strictly limiting the use of lyrics in criminal trials. The final, essential legal defense against censorship, the right to artistic hyperbole, was secured not by the courts, but by organized political action. The digital environment also armed foreign governments. Tyler, the Creator, and his album Goblin set the global exclusion precedent. In 2015, the UK Home Office barred him from entry, citing lyrics from Goblin and Bastard that were years old. Officials even showed Tyler a handwritten list of his own lyrics, arguing they glamorized murder. His claim of a fictional Wolf Haley alter ego was completely rejected. Sovereign states weaponized immigration law to restrict his physical mobility, a form of censorship via passport control, based solely on his persona defense and archived digital content. The conflict then moved to the virtual realm. The controversy surrounding Chief Keef and Finally Rich became about censoring the idea of the artist. Chicago authorities, labeling him an unacceptable role model, banned his attempt to perform via hologram. Organizers moved the show to Indiana, where police shut it down mid-song. The mayor there openly admitted he was banning the performance to prevent Keef from circumventing Mayor Emanuel. This symbolic censorship denied the artist's virtual presence for political optics. Yet, his music's commercial success, surpassing 1 billion streams on Spotify, proved that digital platforms provided a firewall against local political sanctions. But controversy wasn't always a commercial strategy. Lil B's 2011 album, I'm Gay, I'm Happy, used its title as a conceptual statement to challenge sexual identity preconceptions within hip-hop. Despite being heterosexual, Lil B received death threats from listeners. "I'm gonna bash your head in," fans messaged. He refused to back down, stating, "People gonna thank me for the 1% of the people that listen to me and are gonna be free." This was the shock tactic for internal dialogue, an artist weaponizing controversy on purpose, forcing hip-hop to confront its own prejudices. This case raises a critical question about the artist's responsibility. Can intentional shock, even when it causes personal danger, be justified if it forces a cultural conversation that society needs? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. We have one final colossal precedent that defines the end of this era. The power then centralized in the corporate arena with XXXTentacion and his album 17. Facing severe legal charges, the artist became the test case for Spotify's hateful conduct policy, which sought to enforce a moral clause by removing him from editorial playlists. This established DSPs as the new gatekeepers. However, facing immediate backlash from industry leaders, the commercial veto, Spotify swiftly capitulated, reinstating the music. The attempt to police personal ethics failed, proving that financial viability shields high-demand artists from corporate moral standards. Lil Nas X's Montero era refined the game into calculated cultural war. He intentionally embraced satanic iconography to seize media control. The decisive restriction, however, came when Nike sued the manufacturer of the Satan shoes for trademark infringement. This established that when moral or political opposition fails, corporate intellectual property law becomes the most effective and decisive tool for restricting highly controversial artistic statements tied to a brand. The single still became a massive hit, confirming the flawless commercial strategy. The ultimate evolution is the corporate disassociation model, CDM, defined by Ye's exile. Following sustained, non-musical, anti-Semitic rhetoric in 2022, every major partner, Adidas, Gap, Balenciaga, publicly severed ties. Adidas explicitly cited his comments as unacceptable, hateful, and dangerous, immediately shelving $2 billion worth of Yeezy stock and taking a €250 million hit. This was a total ideological deplatforming. The CDM proves that a superstar's speech, when violating fundamental human rights standards, is financially more destructive than the cessation of a highly profitable revenue stream. Despite this exile, Vulture's One debuted at #1. The distributor Fuga initially pulled the album, citing a breach of contract, a vulnerability known as infrastructure weaponization. But the album quickly reappeared independently. This reveals the final contradiction. The CDM removed the multi-billion-dollar brand sponsorship, but forced Ye into a post-exile economic model. By retaining a significantly higher percentage of his revenue via independent distribution, the price of ideological controversy is brand exile, but the reward is unprecedented control over music consumption revenue. The digital dilemma's lesson is clear. The fight for expression has shifted to private policy and financial leverage. The durability of the digital trace, from Mac's lyrics to Ye's tweets, remains the permanent threat. While the power of the state to censor has diminished, the combined power of the platform, the distributor, and the corporate brand partner to enforce total economic and infrastructural disassociation has reached an unprecedented zenith.